Hello, this is Rich Hubble.
Hi.
Uh, I don't see myself shown on the screen. You probably have me listed as Bruce Butler talking because I'm at Bruce Butler's office.
Yeah, so I think what we'll do is we'll wait for the Board of Adjustment and Appeals to all be in attendance
Sure.
and start the meeting. And then at that point, they can designate when and at which point they want to promote people to panelists so they can come up on the screen.
Okay. So we'll just
Does
wait
that
here
make
for a few.
sense?
Yep, that's fine. I mean,
Okay.
I'm unusual that this screen here doesn't have like the video options. It had us test the audio, but it didn't have us test video. I assume you can see us. Is that right?
That's because the way that the town Zoom account is set up, it has to be so people are promoted to panelists, so
I
then
gotcha.
everyone else is automatically an attendee.
I
Yeah,
gotcha. Okay.
it's because it's a webinar, not a meeting.
Right. So we're attendees right now.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. Once
Yep.
once Board of Adjustment and Appeals starts their meeting and they put you in the position of, allowing you to participate in the meeting, then we'll promote you to a panelist. But right
Perfect.
now, um, everyone except for the board itself is not going to be on the screen. And then
Okay.
as people come up, they'll be promoted.
Fine.
So
Okay.
we know, yeah, we know you here. There is a couple other people in the audience too.
Yeah. Okay.
At this point, we're just promoting the board to be panelists.
Right. Gotcha. Uh,
Wait, why aren't we?
Sam, we can hear you.
Can you hear?
I can hear. Yeah.
We don't have, let's see, where's the audio?
You probably have to start the video. There you are.
Yep.
Where's that? Okay, well, we have a couple.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
So before you guys get started, we do have the code enforcement officer and we have Rich in the audience as well as Bob as an attendant. Do you want them, the code enforcement officer and Rich, to be promoted as a panelist so you see them on the screen at all times? Do you want to wait until you start the meeting? How do you want to go about in this process? So then I can follow your direction.
I don't understand.
Just that they'll be up in one of the little boxes all the time.
Yeah,
Do you want,
That's fine.
I
Totally
guess the
fine.
question is, who do you want in the box? Do you want the code enforcement officer? Do you want Rich? And do you want all of the attendees, or do you want just the board and the code enforcement officer and Rich? I'm asking you how you would want to, who you want in a box in front of you.
So
Anybody and everybody. I mean,
Anybody
this
that's
is-
in attendance, you want
Sure.
them to promote it so you see them in a box? Okay, that's fine. Yep. I didn't want to do anything without seeing what direction you guys wanted to go in. So I will promote everybody so you could see everybody in a box.
Yay.
I read it. What is it? Hi, guys.
Hey, hey, Bob.
Start the
We're
video.
still waiting for.
My,
All right. So what I'm going to do for now is, because there is a couple of minutes, I'll just go ahead and mute. So then that way people can talk amongst themselves, because it is already recorded on YouTube. And then if you want to just raise your hand when you want to get started, then you can get started. Okay.
Yes. Is Tammy here? Ah, there's, hi, Tammy. Still have 4 minutes. What's the difference? Oof. One, two, three, no. Just got a problem. I just need him. Righty, do you wanna go, guys? It's. Oh, it's only 4:26, 5:26. Shall we start? See, probably everyone's here. You wanna start, Vika?
It's your meeting. I'm just here to do
Okay,
the technical part.
then let's start. Okay, so the meeting is called to order at
5:27.
5:27. Okay, and a quorum exists because all three of our members are here. Cheryl, Tad, and I. And the first order of business is to review and approve the minutes of the February 6th, 2024 meeting. Did you get them, Cheryl?
Yes, I did, but I don't think since I was not at that meeting that I'm part of approving the minutes.
Okay, well, they can never be approved. This is her own two of us. Well, that's,
Do we have the minute of the other meeting too? That's being part of the hearing with the Hubbles.
right. So we can't approve, well, we already,
We can't do that either because.
right, because Cheryl won't, we'll do that at the next meeting. then.
Okay.
Okay, we discussed new business, which is Charles Hall's resignation from the board on February 6th, 2024. Vika, have we gotten anyone else to apply? No?
No, there hasn't been anybody that has applied. My suggestion is once you, as a board, get through this, then maybe we can meet and try to find some ways that we can potentially recruit other people.
Okay. The next order of business is to approve Cheryl Stevens' participation in the continued hearing for 52 Caps Road. She watched the meeting, but she did not attend it because we didn't have the hybrid format and we decided not to vote on it that night. So there's a few things that Cheryl needs to do. Did you read page, is it 46, 45 and 46?
No, I don't think I have that manual.
You don't,
Are you talking about the Board of Adjustment and Appeals training manual or? Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. I didn't read it. I did watch the entire YouTube. I was present right up until the last. I always have that habit of leaving at the wrong time, but right up to the last 20 minutes or so. And then I went back and watched the whole YouTube. So I am very familiar with what occurred at the last meeting, what was presented, the variance application. I've been over it and I feel prepared.
okay,
I have some questions, but I feel prepared.
right. So tonight we were going to, at the time, the meeting ended effectively, we were almost ready to close the meeting to public comments, but because you didn't have a chance to ask any questions, what we were going to do is have Richard present or recap his presentation. And we're also going to hear from the code enforcement officer. So I think if we have to go through the usual steps, but the order of business would be we'd have Tammy go first, just because we haven't heard from her and we can hear the background.
Sounds good.
So that
Yep.
sound good? Okay, so next on the agenda is to discuss old business, which is continue hearing the appeal for a variance from the side setback requirements for 52 Caps Road, which is lots I-04, 046 and I-04, 047. Conflict of interest or bias?
No,
No. Have you, Cheryl? Okay.
No, I did not.
So, and we've gone over this before, but we'll just go over it again. Proper notices have been given from the file provided and kept by the town. It is apparent that proper notice has been given to the parties directly concerned, the public, abutters, through newspaper advertisement, by mail, and by public posting virtually and actually of the agenda and packet for the meeting. So the appeal, in summary, is the owners of lots IO 04, IO4, IO4, 046 and IO4, 047 have requested a variance from the side setback requirements owing to practical difficulty. Next, excuse me, establish the type of review and role of the board, the board's jurisdiction. Oops, did I put something? We're just reviewing the need for a variance. Right. So the board's jurisdiction to hear the appeal comes from MRS 30-A, section 4353 in Town of Spag Island, zoning ordinance, section 603. The standing of applicants has been established. They've provided documents establishing ownership of the properties in question. And the file has been reviewed and it's complete, and the applicants have paid all applicable fees. And the rules of procedure is, as I just said, except I thought, first we're going to hear from the code enforcement officer, and then the board members will ask questions and the applicants can ask questions, and those directly affected can ask questions. And then we'll go into the recap by Richard. And then we will close the hearing to public comment.
Sam,
Yeah,
real quick, it looks like Richard and the individuals that he was with have dropped off the Zoom call. I don't know the reason behind it, but they're not currently in attendance.
how do we respond to that?
But we need them to be, right?
An important part of this process.
about that?
In fact, without them, I don't see how we can possibly carry it.
Well, they were on, maybe they had, does
Yes, they
anybody
were.
have a,
I don't have a phone number for them.
he
the
was at the office of Bruce Butler?
Okay, yeah, Bruce Butler, maybe it's on the architect's plan. It is, it's in really tiny printing. So.
Someone, oh, there he is.
Okay, I don't know what went on there, but the thing all dumped off on us and it's now back online, so. Wait a minute, what's,
Welcome back.
okay,
We needed you.
well, I know that, and I needed you. I don't know, who was Laura H? That's not like.
I don't know who that is, but it was somebody I tried promoted to panelist and then
I
they
think
raised their
it
hand.
might be my daughter, who's,
Okay.
you're only gonna let her watch.
Well, I tried promoting her to a panelist, but it doesn't
Oh.
look like they're accepting, so that's
Okay.
okay.
Okay, so I don't know what I missed out on here, but,
No, just to reiterate, we were just going to let Tammy go first, the code enforcement officer, so that she could
okay,
what happened and what led to this variance application.
Hey, Sam. Basically, I had met, at my first visit on the island, I had met the applicant, doing some work on another project, and then he took me across the street to show me this house and had some questions about setbacks and whatnot, and said that he wanted to do an addition. And I don't remember if I told him to submit an application or what the direction was at that time. I think it was back in like October. But basically, I said that I'd have to look into it. I knew it was probably, I didn't know what the setbacks were on the island at the time. I didn't commit to anything, and I just said, I had to also check the non-conforming language. And so after that, he submitted his application, and we kind of went through the setbacks and determined that he needs a variance in order to do what he's looking to do tonight. Not a real exciting story, pretty much it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? Cheryl? Do you have any
Yes.
questions for Tammy?
No.
Richard?
yeah, I just clarify one item there, and that is that I actually put the application in a while before, excuse me, before Tammy came on as the code enforcement officer. And I think it was essentially waiting there for a while, because the town was without a code enforcement officer for a while. But, she picked it up at some point, and she did tell me about the setback issues, and that we needed to do a variance. And so we did that, and then we're, here back again tonight because we couldn't complete the meeting last month. In the meantime, I have, I wanted to sort of explore a little bit further.
Unknown caller.
Just get, that's yours. Sorry about that. And so I decided, based on some of the comments that came out at the meeting and just trying to understand the better, the ordinance and how things worked, I decided to do a little bit of, research on this. And as I indicated, I put together this memo after I did the research. I talked to several other towns about how these things are handled to get a better understanding of how things might be going. So, I looked at this, and what it appeared to me when I first, I think, had the contact with Tammy, I had a question about it. I wasn't really that clear about the non-conforming structure and what it could be added onto, and that part of the ordinance. So I went back to look at that, and it seemed to say, as I quoted here in my comments here, that a non-conforming building can be added to or expanded after obtaining a permit from the same permitting authority as that of the new structure or a new structure, if such addition or expansion does not increase the nonconformity of the structure or expand the area of nonconforming use. That particular section, that's 5.1a, goes on to explain a few more items about uses and so forth, which I found a little confusing. So I'm assuming we're just talking about the structure here, not the use, since the use is residential and we're in a residential zone. So it did seem to me that the critical issue with that statement about how to deal with non-conforming structures and additions to them has to do with the not increasing the nonconformity. And unfortunately, the ordinance does not define or describe how a nonconformity is increased. And there appear to be at least two possible definitions. One that is common in a good number of communities is that if the addition or expansion is no closer to the lot line than the existing structure's nonconformity, then it's considered to not increase the nonconformity. Now, a second definition is that if any portion of the expansion is not conforming with the ordinance, which it impairs or impedes on the setback, then it would be deemed to increase the nonconformity. So the problem with the Shipee ordinance and that many other town ordinances that use similar language, and I found several that did, is that it doesn't specify which of these two ways of determining increase in nonconformities to be used. So I sort of stepped back and I said, well, now what can we do to resolve that? And the more restrictive interpretation prohibits any addition to a nonconforming structure that doesn't itself comply with all the dimensional standards of the ordinance. And if that was the intent of the ordinance would not use the term increasing the nonconformity, because the increasing nonconformity term implies that there are degrees of nonconformity, which an absolute prohibition against nonconformity would not allow. Therefore, since the ordinance is written to consider degrees of nonconformity, it would require the code enforcement officer, or perhaps the Board of Appeals, it seemed to write here that would be the code enforcement officer, to evaluate the degree of nonconformity, or the degree of conformity. In this case, the ordinance requires that the degree of nonconformity not be increased. So maintaining, or more certainly decreasing, the degree of nonconformity, that would be being further from the lot line than the existing structure. The grandfathered situation clearly meets the requirement to not increase the nonconformity. This suggests that the more restrictive approach that prohibits any addition or expansion is not implied in the wording of 501.1a. Now, I felt, as I looked at this further, it appears there's another issue that needs to be considered. So many towns like Shebig have believed over the years that controlling land development through zoning is, in the public interest, and it's a good thing to do. However, the nature of zoning is to prescribe and limit what an owner can do with his or her land. Corollary of that is that if the ordinance does not prohibit or require something, the owner is free to develop the land or add to the structure or make other changes as she or he sees fit. For example, in Shebig, I don't think there's anything in the ordinance that says what color I have to paint my house. If I were in a historic district, it might be different. But I basically can paint the house any color I want. Anybody else can on the island. There are certain other types of provisions of this nature too. And the reason why, I guess I'd say furthermore, if it makes sense that if the ordinance is unclear about a restriction, if there are choices about things that could be made, then the owner is free to follow the least restrictive interpretation of the zoning provision. And this is because the nature of zoning, as we might remember, is to restrict an owner's natural right to use the property as he or she sees fit, unless the zoning clearly limits that freedom in some way. Because this ordinance does not clearly define how an increase in nonconformity is to be calculated or determined, and does not outright prohibit additions that do not comply with the setback requirements, the less restrictive no closer to the lot line concept should be used. That's what I would elect to use. In fact, with the use of the less restrictive definition, the variance is not needed since the CEO is permitted by the ordinance to issue the building permit, because section 501.1a allows him or her to issue a permit if the proposed work does not increase the existing nonconformity. And I would say perhaps in the past, there should be been in existence now 15, 16 years, there may have been actions from past CEOs which actually allowed this to happen, that said no closer to the lot line is fine. There are two examples of this on the street on Capps Road itself. I think these were probably done when Cumberland was in charge, but and needless to say that there may be some cases in the last 15 or 16 years where the code enforcement officer looked at things and said, yes, it's fine, you're no closer to the lot line. But interestingly enough, because that would have been approved that way as a building permit, it would never come before the Zoning Board of Appeals. So the zoning board would not have much experience with this particular situation. There may not be many record of it. I found no record of a similar situation with the zoning board when I reviewed the last 10 years of work that's on the website. So I guess if the town feels we're going to have the less restrictive definition is not appropriate, and they want to go ahead with the absolute prohibition, then an application for practical difficulty would be required. And the applicants, I've already presented that, And I'd be glad to go, further into that to go over the cases that we made on that when we submitted it back in January. I would note that, in addition to the 6 findings of minimal impact on environment and neighborhood, the key issue is the requirement that there is not a feasible alternative to the proposed addition that would comply with the ordinance, and that meeting the code requirements would cause significant economic burden to the owner. The application documents that relocating the proposed addition to make it comply with the ordinance would cost at least several tens of thousands of dollars. The concept of feasible, I would note, is not the same as possible. Feasibility includes weighing other factors such as cost, technical design, environmental impact, and aim items that are usually included in typical feasibility studies. When a project is being considered, it is common to conduct a feasibility study, not just a possibility study. So the numerous competing factors can be weighed. The key feasibility factors for this proposed addition are that more building materials and land would be required, that the cost would be significantly higher if the addition itself is made to comply with the setback, and finally, the neighborhood impact and impact on butters for a fully non-conforming addition would not be significantly different than that of the proposed addition, and in some ways would be less. Now, the last thing I did while I was doing my work on this was I searched through local zoning ordinances. So Cumberland, obviously the ordinance came from Cumberland. And I looked at Yarmouth, and I looked at Falmouth, and I looked at North Yarmouth, and I looked at Freeport, and I looked at Topsom, because I did I did a Google search on not increasing nonconformity. The town of Topsom came up. So I reviewed these, and I discovered that Cumberland, Freeport, and Topsom in particular have almost exactly the same non-definitive language about not increasing nonconformity. So I asked them how, just out of the blue, I'm just calling up, I want to find out how your ordinance works. I asked them to define that. And so in the case of Topsom and in the case of Freeport, I've attached their responses to me, which clearly shows that they treat these situations as no closer to the lot line is considered to be not increasing nonconformity. It's not to say everybody does it that way, but those are 2 towns that do. Eric, in the meantime, contacted Bill Longley, in Cumberland, and he did not submit an email to us, but I have Eric Weigel, who's my contractor here with me tonight, and what I'd like him to do is just to take a couple moments, I'll just slide it here, and describe his conversation with Mr. Longley about how Cumberland handles this. Eric Weigel.
Go ahead, Mayor.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I spoke with Bill Longley just to get an idea of how he did it. And he said pretty much what Rich just said. He says to the non-conformity, which means, he gave me a real example. He says there's a cottage 20 feet from the road. They want to put an addition on it. They're already within, the entire building is within the normal 50-foot setback, or 20-foot setback rather. Or in this case, it was 50 feet for this. But anyways, it was only 20 feet back. He allowed them to add an addition to the back of it and to expand it backwards and add more, double the size of the house and such. And his explanation was non-conformity means you don't go any closer to the line. He allowed them to add more to it as long as they didn't encroach any closer to the road frontage.
Or the sideline.
Or the sidelines. Yeah. So he said that's how he determined non-conformity. He says he would give a permit, like if this, we had brought this one to them, he says, I would just give you the permit to do it as long as you do not encroach any closer to the sideline, then he would allow you to put an addition on. So, thank you.
Thanks, Eric. I think, at this point, I looked through all this and it just comes to me, I'm not clear how it should be, what their rules are for how they define not increasing non-conformity. I think there's clearly some comments made at the last meeting that suggest they would take the more conservative way of looking at it, that anything that was not conforming would be increasing the non-conformity. I just say that in an awful lot of towns, it seemed to me that have similar language that have determined it to be a different way. And so, one option here is for the town to, agree with that. And then in which case we don't really have to go through the rest of the variance. The other item is you don't agree with that and decide that we want to continue with the variance, and in which case I'd be prepared to go through the terms of the variance I had. I guess before we do that, I'd simply ask if you had any questions about my comments and my findings and the code enforcement actions or not actions, but code enforcement comments about how they interpret the ordinances.
Yes. First, let me clarify a few things about your ponderings on non-conforming uses. You cited section 500, section 501. When you look at section 501, there's a footnote symbol. The footnote says non-conforming lots not in the shoreland zone are covered in section 205. So you would have to go to section 205 to see what those limitations are. Second, our zoning ordinance, section 110 definitions does define increase in nonconformity of a structure. It says any change in a structure or property which causes further deviation from the dimensional standards, creating the nonconformity. So if you want to, I don't know if you.
I don't have the whole thing right in front of me right now to contend with that, but what you're telling me is that I may have made my comments, whatever they are, but they don't apply. So I guess we're back to.
I'm asking. I looked up the Merriam-Webster definition of increase, Black's Law Dictionary definition of increase, and in each case, I'll read you Black's Law Dictionary: to make greater, to multiply, to produce more. So your argument that there must be a gradation or definition of increase, it's just two is more than one, that's an increase. You don't have to have a degree of increase, a percentage of increase, it's an absolute. So,
okay, that's your definition of it, or that's what you're saying the ordinance says. I have to go look at the rest of the ordinance to concur with that. There are lots of references back and forth in the ordinance about different sections, and so I do have one thing I want to take a quick look at here, because I do have portions of the Shabig ordinance here with me.
excuse me, Rico?
But I think at this point, based on what you're telling me, we need to proceed with the variance, and I guess we can try to go through that and see where we end up with that. So what I'm trying to do here, why am I? Oh, here we go.
Okay,
Rico.
I have
So-
a question. I have a question for the code enforcement officer on this issue.
Cheryl, excuse me, Vika had her hand up first.
Oh, I thought I did too. But that's okay.
That's what I wanted to reference. Cheryl has had her hand up for quite a while. What I want to make sure that the board understands is when it comes to the three of you board members, you don't need to raise your hand. You could just unmute yourself if you're muted and just go ahead and speak. So then that way Cheryl doesn't have to have her hand up the whole entire time waiting
Okay.
to speak. So that's all I wanted to say. So I'm just going to mute myself back and go back in the background.
Thank you.
All questions are supposed to be going through. So.
Go
So
file.
you would like me to ask the code enforcement officer my question?
You, so that we know the order in which
I'm sorry, I didn't understand you.
you may speak.
The question I had was, it was the code enforcement officer that told Rich that he needed to apply for a variance, and I would like to hear from her what her experience with nonconformity is, and because that was her first reaction. We were not the ones who requested that Rich apply for a variance.
Yeah, typically, this is the way that, as far as straight non-conforming zoning, this is the way that it's been applied in any other community that I've worked in. I've been doing this for over 30 years and have worked in several municipalities. And typically, you know, if he had come in and asked to add this on to the other side that met the setback, then we wouldn't be sitting here right now. Because he wasn't changing the use, he wasn't expanding the use. It was a single family to a single family. But where he came in and he wanted to put the addition on in line with the current setback, which is 10 feet from the property line. By definition, which, you know, when you do different work in different municipalities, things can be slightly different. So when you're making an interpretation, you always refer back to the definition. And so if I'm looking at something in Shabik zoning ordinance, I always flip back and make sure I read the definition of non-conforming. So I know exactly what it says. And so that was the definition. And so that's basically why we're here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One other thing, Richard, our zoning ordinance, section 108, which is conflicts with other ordinances, says whenever a provision of this ordinance conflicts with or is inconsistent with another provision of this ordinance or of any other ordinance, regulation, or statute administered by the municipality, the more restrictive provision shall control. So we as a board are generally directed to use the more restrictive definition of things or ordinances.
Okay, well, let's continue that. I guess the issue is we go back to where we were before, and I guess you had suggested that in doing the meeting here, we would I'd have a chance to represent the variant application, and that would also give Cheryl an opportunity to ask me any questions on it. So I guess with that, I'll just go back to what I had for a month ago, or actually submitted a couple of months ago at this point. So the overall, you know, project for this goal, the goal of this project was to create an unusable two-story cottage, make it habitable by adding a modest two-bedroom year-round dwelling and connecting the two structures so the code-compliant kitchen, bathrooms, and stairway can serve the existing structure, creating a four-bedroom summer seasonal residence. With the existing structure approximately 7 feet from the side property line at its closest point, the architect determined the most cost-efficient, workable connection of the two structures would result in a new structure being 3 to 4 feet further from the property line at its closest point to the sideline than the existing structure. And that's shown in the attached drawings. If we were to modify the connection of the two buildings so that the addition complied with the 20-foot setback, which essentially would mean moving it approximately something like 7 or 10 feet forward on the lot. I guess I say forward, I'm going to say to the southeast. An additional two-story high connecting structure would have to be built, and modification of the existing structure's dormer and roof would be required. And Eric has estimated, I put the estimate in the proposal, that would cost us $35,000. We then get into the issue. So from that standpoint, we determined that the most feasible, not to say other things aren't possible, but the most feasible, cost-effective way of doing this was to do this in a way that, you know, that we've laid out here. And to do it any other way is going to require at least spending $35,000. If we were to move the cottage, it would cost dramatically more than that because it has a fireplace in it. I got an estimate for that was $35,000 12 years ago, and I'm sure it's more expensive now. If we were to build a wholly separate new structure, it's going to take up more space in the lot. Clearly, it's going to cost probably $100,000 more. We look. There are now some additional, I think, 6 points in the variance procedure that asks us to determine that number one, or A, is that the variance is due to a unique circumstance of the property, not the general conditions. So we're basically, you know, because we'd have to move the whole, you know, thing forward. we would have to do that. Now, what's going on in the rest of the neighborhood really has nothing to bear with this. The only thing I was commenting on the rest of the neighborhood is that there are several buildings on relatively substandard or, you know, non-conforming lots in the area that are probably close to the lot line in some cases, and they would have, you know, similar situation, but that has no bearing on this particular issue. The proposed addition, this has to do with whether we're going to create an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood and whether we're detrimentally going to affect the value of the abutting property. So the proposed addition will not negatively affect the character of the neighborhood since it's simply adding on to a seasonal residential structure to make it habitable. If anything, the proposed project will enhance the neighborhood and property values by taking a cottage that's been declined for at least 60 years, with little, if any, maintenance or repair, renovating it and adding a structure with code compliant features and space to make it habitable. The proposed addition uses the minimum amount of land to achieve this, with the least disruption to the neighborhood compared to other alternatives. The 9,400 square foot lot abutting the sideline for which the variance is sought is wooded and undeveloped. The proposed structure generally is parallel to the lot line for approximately 26 feet, taking up that much of the abutting lot's quote view of my property. Moving the additional 9 to 10 feet away from the lot is not going to change that. They're still going to have the same 26 feet along the line there. It'll be a little further apart. Okay, now the next issue is whether the difficulty here is the result of action taken by the applicant or a prior owner. The existing structure was built about 100 years ago. I don't know exactly when, but it's been away for a long time. And while it meets the 25-foot setback from Capps Road, it's only about 7 feet from the closest sideline. Other setbacks are way larger than the 20 feet that's required. Since this lot is permanently attached to 2 other lots, they cannot be separated because they're all substandard. So there's plenty of room, you know, to the other sides. Since the proposed addition is no closer to the sideline than the current condition of the existing structure, you know, this is a matter of opinion, but I don't feel that the proposed addition will make the setback situation worse or more non-conforming. You obviously, looking at what you feel the ordinance says, you know, don't agree with that, but that's the way I look at it at the time. So, other feasible alternatives. I've already indicated that, you know, if we had to move it so it's 20 feet back, then we're going to have to spend another 35 grand. We build a total new structure. We're talking about another 100,000. And then we'd end up leaving the existing structure or have to tear it down as an uninhabitable building suitable only for day use or storage. Regarding how this will affect the environment, the proposed addition has an approximately 470 square foot footprint on the lot and would be built in a mostly cleared part of the lot. All other alternatives would have a much bigger footprint, probably twice as big. The 470 square foot footprint is less than 2% of the total lot area. The only major vegetation that would be removed is a large diseased and rotting maple, which would still need to be removed even if the addition were modified to meet the setback requirement. Furthermore, the proposed addition uses the minimum amount of construction materials compared to alternatives, and at the same time preserves the existing structure, thus conserving materials. It also conserves the architectural style, which is consistent with the neighborhood. I didn't put that in there, but I'll add that on there. This optimal use of the existing structure with a minimal use of new materials reduces the overall environmental impact of the project compared to other alternatives that would meet the setback requirements. The last item is whether it's in the shoreland zone, and according to the town shoreland zoning map, no part of the project's located in the shoreland zone residential overlay district. So that's my comments there. And I guess I'm open to any questions or thoughts. Where do we want to go? I know Cheryl didn't have a chance to weigh in last time, so I'd be glad to answer any questions.
I do have some questions, but
Mhm.
I'll defer to the chair to go first.
Go first. Oh, you
Okay,
want- Go first.
okay. To be honest with you, Rich, when I was looking at what was sent to me electronically, I couldn't figure out why you would want to do what you were doing until I went to Staples and printed out your plans. It so that I could read them. And now I can see what you're doing. Which is you're creating a 4-bedroom house. And the way I'm looking at the drawings, the existing structure will have 2 bedrooms
Mhm.
and a living area on the downstairs.
Right.
It won't have any plumbing, right?
That's the idea, is to try to minimize, put it all in the new construction. Yeah,
Right. So no plumbing, no heating, right?
that's correct. We're looking at having this as a seasonal addition.
Okay. And it has a 8 to 9 foot common wall with the new structure.
Right, and there'd be both on both floors, there'd be insulated doors that could be closed in the off season or opened up during the season and allow access at both levels to be able to move back and forth easily. And
Yeah,
also,
I would encourage you to treat that 8 to 9 foot common wall as an exterior wall. Because that's basically what
Right.
it is.
No,
And
no,
that's from my own personal experience
No,
with
we-
the same
we-
situation.
yeah, we definitely would do that. It'd be fully insulated. Bruce can speak to that more if we need to. I have my architect.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's I was just, that has nothing to do with it.
Right.
Okay. So it is, from the way I understand it, if the building itself is basically 26 or 28 feet wide, the front of the house,
Yeah,
and 18 feet deep, right?
something like that. Yeah,
Okay. So the new structure is the same size, correct?
pretty much. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So overall, from what I can see of the design, because my first impression of when I saw what you were doing, I was like, why doesn't he just build a separate 2-bedroom house and use the old house as a guest cottage? Well, I can see the advantages that you see of not having plumbing or heating in that part of the house, as long as you maintain your building envelope on the heated side.
Yep.
So what improvements? I also noticed that you have like a partial basement under the new part.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay.
It's mostly just for utility access. I know we got to bring water in from a well. We got to obviously send sewage out to a septic tank. And the idea was we wanted to be able to get access to the plumbing that's in that section of the building. So if you look at the plans, all of the major plumbing, major electrical plumbing, all that kind of stuff is all essentially in that part of the house that's directly over that foundation.
Mhm.
And we
So
don't need,
that house that part will have a foundation and the other part will be on posts.
correct, similar to the current structure. I think actually the engineer has suggested that there's going to be more than just posts under the section, underneath part of the section that is
Connected.
attached to where it's not really where it's attached, but there's a major portion of the new structure that has a lot of glass in it, and the the engineer wants to have a more stable footing than just posts underneath it. And the post, any post would be, concrete footings down below the frost line and then build up above that. And of course, the floor would all be fully insulated underneath.
Yeah, I would encourage you to have a full foundation under the new part for sure. Okay, what else do I have? So do you have an approximate total cost for this project?
Well, it depends how you look at all the costs, but I mean, Eric was commenting, he quoted me about $300 a square foot on Shabig, and so I think we're looking at about 800 square feet for the cottage, maybe 850. So if you do that, you're talking about roughly $250,000. Roughly speaking.
Plus and what are the improvements to the existing building?
Existing building, if I don't get these right, Bruce, you can weigh in. We've changed the windows on the second floor so the 2 bedrooms would have egress code windows. They'd be a little bit bigger. And other than that, other than a little bit of intersection where the roofs come together and there's on the gable end, where the buildings are attached, where there's now a window, that would then be replaced by a door.
Mhm.
And there's a little bit of a rearrangement of some interior walls to make the second bedroom near that junction point. It's more like a cubby hole for young kids, I think. Is there any other
I'm
comments you wanna make on that,
assuming,
Bruce?
I'm
Oh, and there'd
assuming
be
that that the existing building currently does have plumbing though, right?
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't?
No, it was taken off when the former owners decided they owned it for 2 years and they decided they wanted to try to do something, so they started taking things apart, and then they decided to change their mind and they sold us the building. So the plumbing that was there was ridiculous. It was a cesspool somewhere in the front yard. The building, the woman who had been living in it did not have any electricity and did not have any water. So she was like, I guess I'm going to say, was squatting in her mother's house. It's been a long time since it ever had any proper plumbing or whatever. Even if we were to replace that footprint of the little tiny kitchen and little thing that used to be there, it wouldn't meet current code. And if we wanted to go do something up on the second floor for that, we'd have to go higher anyway. So the current footprint would be even closer to the lot line than what we're proposing. So
Mhm. So, and for the exterior of the existing building, are you making improvements there?
we haven't fully decided exactly what we're doing there. What's there now is what's called novelty siding, and it appears as if that could be shingled to match the rest of this other structure without having to put any it's got 3/4 of an inch of siding, and that's it. There's no subframe or anything like that. So I think if we were to do anything there, it would just be a matter of using the same kind of shingling that we'd use on the other house and just shingling over what's there. And
Yeah, I was really wondering how it would blend with the new part.
right. Then that would be, I mean, if we didn't do that, we'd have to, scrape and paint it, which seems to me to be more work than it's worth. So,
And you'd be doing it continually.
yes. So the idea about this, now that I'm in my 70s, the idea is to do this thing so I don't have to do any more maintenance on it before I part the
Right. Right, exactly. I would encourage that myself. Okay. The only other question I had, I mean, we heard from a number of your neighbors who wrote in support, but the direct abutter we didn't hear from, and
I did talk to him.
yeah,
He says he has no current plans for what he's going to do with that lot right now. I wouldn't say he was wildly supportive, but he wasn't particularly negative either. And as you can see you can't really see on the plan, but that lot is 60 feet wide and it's about 130 feet long. It's 9,400 square feet. So I don't want to, insult anybody on it, but I think it's highly unlikely he's going to be able to build much of anything on that lot anyway. Because brand new construction, he'd have to have 20-foot setbacks, which means he has a 20-foot wide envelope to build something in. And then there are neighbors all around him, including us, that have wells, and he'd have to do something with a septic tank. I'm not sure how he'd get that in there. So that lot has a well in it, which served, the owner of that lot used to own a cottage across the street. His sister bought him out, but he kept the lot. And that lot had a well in it that was a well for that other cottage. It's no longer being used for that. And our septic field, the work we've done to estimate where the septic tank is going to go, and we have a septic tank design made, or a leach field design, is in fact more than 100 feet from that well. And there's a well on this property. It's a surface well with an extra well pipe drilled in the bottom of it. And this summer, we're going to have that removed by the well drillers that drilled my well on the corner of the lot. So I think it's getting back to that lot. I think it's wooded, it's undeveloped. I think it's going to be pretty hard for somebody to develop it. And as I said in my thing here, I think if we move this building 10 feet to comply with the setback, it's not going to change how it's going to affect his property very much.
Yeah, and my last question was, you know, when you talked about the $35,000 additional cost to be in compliance, I don't really understand how you could build something connected to the existing structure and be in compliance with 20-foot setback, since, well, you'd have about 5 feet, I guess.
Well,
Would you be out more on the front, or?
I can, perhaps I should have Bruce step in here since he's the architect, and he did a few pencil drawings of what, you know, sort of thought about what we could do, and then we handed that to Eric, and he said, this is what we can do. So I'll have
Yeah.
Bruce talk about that.
Hi, I'm Bruce Butler.
And Bruce?
How are you?
Good.
Good. I just want to say first, the addition, the location of the addition is not arbitrary. It's not just, wouldn't it look nice if we stepped the buildings from each other to define the different volumes? There's a sweet spot where those two gable ends cross, where we can get a 7-foot doorway through. That's what determined the location of the addition. And that was the most cost-effective way to combine the two buildings and make them work the way they work. Once we have to pull that building further away from the other building, we have to somehow create a connecting tower, which looks awful because it goes in front of the dormer of the original building, and you have to build a tower, which wouldn't have been there in the design that we'd like to see built. So that was the way to kind of get the two buildings to work on all levels, was to create this tower that went up higher than both buildings in order for the roof lines to work, or even try to make the roof lines work. So it got complicated very quickly.
Yeah.
And the tower's probably about 40 feet high by the time we're done, right, Bruce?
Yeah, it's high.
Well, that answers my question then. Thank you.
There was another question that came up the last time. I don't know whether you picked up on it, but just want to comment on regarding your question about the abutting lot. And there was a question regarding that person, if they were to build something on that lot, what would their view be? I wrote in here view and question marks onto my property, which is, it's semi-cleared, semi-wooded. But actually any kind of view, if most people on Chebeaga are interested in a view toward the water. And if you look at the full drawing of the site plan, which includes properties down all the way to the water, because it includes whole other project that we've been working on for the last 10 years. The view from that lot would not be past the house. It would be off to, if you're on that lot, it would be off to more to the northeast or the east. So it would be across, actually, maybe the best way you can define this. A little drawing here. I don't know whether you can see this or not. It's just, can you see the lot here? So here's so this is where the building is. The lot we're talking about, that 60-foot wide abutting lot is here.
Rich, are you able to do this on a computer if we allow screen sharing?
Bruce, do you think you can do that?
I'll see if I can have this. It'll take me a second to find it. This is Scheme J.
Yeah, Scheme J. Yeah.
Let me see if I can find it.
It's the same thing that was in the packet that
Yes.
Yes.
That's correct.
I had blown up so I could read it. So
Yeah.
I have one.
Looking at Tad and I are looking at the design as. so
Looking at it too.
Yeah. I mean-
You can see.
I mean, we can try to screen
By the
share it, but it's there. I guess what we say is that if you're looking from that lot, visualize, you're going to be looking off somewhat to your left in order to have a view of the water, which is across my other piece of property on the island, which has is mostly cleared. It does have one building in the way, a garage that blocks part of the view. But essentially, anybody up that way, my neighbors up that way, look across my lot in order to have a view of the water. And so this particular structure where it's built is not really going to have any effect of that, that you really can't see the water past the house there. If we were to, you know, nix the whole thing and build a 4-bedroom house in the middle of the lot, that might have more effect on somebody's view from the neighboring lot than where we are. Because we're all tucked up in the corner, fairly close to Caps Road. And so the view to the water is definitely across the other properties, which I keep mowed so everybody can see.
Yeah, we can see that on-
I guess I do have one more question. It does appear from, since you brought this to my attention, that you've got a little bit of a Kennedy compound thing going here. With the exception of Sally Tubicine's sister's house. What is your, it's really none of my business, but I mean, you already have a house, right?
Yep. Okay,
Are
so
you planning on using this house or selling it?
I'm planning on using it. Okay, so let me explain my thought process. We bought this place quite a while ago when it came on the market, and we're the neighbors, so we decided we would like to buy it. So we didn't know exactly what we were going to do with it. It took us a while to figure it out. The current house that I have is part of the so-called compound I share with my sister, and she's now reached retirement age. And right now, for the last 10 years, she's generally come to Shabik for 3 or 4 months, 3 or 4 weeks in the summer, and we rotate back and forth. And I sort of realized, well, pretty soon she's likely to want to spend and be able to spend more time on the island, and would probably like to spend more time. And that would mean I would spend less time in the cottage. And I also have, now I have 3 grandchildren. You know, we would like to be able to entertain them or maybe let them use the other house that's a little bit bigger without having, you know, without being in their way. It also gives us the ability to expand the season and we're not going to be living there year round, but it allows us to stay there until November or to come out in April. And so that's why we want to do it. And it appeared, based on this design, when I got together with Bruce, that this was the way. I mean, all my wife and I need is 2 little, you know, 1 big bedroom, 1 little guest bedroom, and a kitchen and whatever. And then we can shack up there for a month that we don't have the other place. And so, and if my kids want to stay there for a weekend or something like that, and we need a little overflow space, then we have it, and people can still flush the toilet and make themselves a piece of toast for breakfast. So that's how we're planning on using it.
Yeah, good. Somebody just has a really long walk to that bathroom. I'm not staying in that bedroom.
Well, I worked very hard with Bruce to make sure that the walk was exactly the same level and there are no steps in the way.
Yes, yes, yes.
You look at how that's designed. It was we worked a lot on that to make sure that it was. I want to make sure people could get through there, you know, with a nightlight without tripping on something. So
Exactly.
you know, and you know, we've tried to make this as you know, as easy to live in as possible for, you know, people that are advancing in age. And you know, if we needed to, you know, we have the deck and so forth like out front. You know, we clearly could make access ramps and so forth there if we needed to do that. So you know, that makes it pretty easy to do that. It probably wouldn't give us access to upstairs unless we, you know, put an elevator in or something like that. But that second, you know, bedroom there where the fireplace is, if I have more grandchildren and we have more people saying, I imagine that's not just going to be a, you know, fancy room with a coffee table to watch the fire. You're probably going to have a couple of sleep sofas, and we definitely could use that on that floor.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so it provides that comfort or that accessibility. Plus, we are showing a half bath on that first floor, so that's a
Mhm.
possibility too.
Well, it does appear that your design is intended to be cost effective and to make use of the building that is there. And the neighbors that did write in, you know, their primary concern is that building and its deterioration.
Right, and we've all been worried about that. So, you know, we have taken steps. Eric did work on it last fall to prop it up underneath and redo all the underpinnings and all the entire support structure of the building has all been redone. So it's ready to go.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Richard,
Uh-oh,
yesterday, and the rest
little
of
freeze there. Let's hope it-
I sent an email that I received from Natalie Burns, who is of counsel to the town.
Okay,
And it concerns an issue I brought up in the first part of the hearing. And then didn't pursue further at that time, but I do want to revisit it, and I would like to, I will just read this. If you, I can only do it by blocking the screen. I'm very sorry.
it's okay. We'll listen carefully.
Okay. So, hi Natalie, this is my question for an upcoming TOCI Board of Adjustment and Appeals meeting. 2 contiguous parcels are conveyed by a single deed, parens, parcel 1 and parcel 2, close parens. Parcel 1 is improved and was formerly known as Lot 11 per 1904 survey. Parcel 2 is unimproved and was formerly known as lots 9 and 10. Lots 9 and 10 had been formally merged in a previous document. Both parcels are non-conforming lots of record that could not be further divided. Is it correct that the 2 parcels conveyed by this deed have not been formally merged and could still be sold separately? In other words, they cannot be considered a single parcel. I asked this question because unlike those of other towns, the town of Spig Island zoning ordinance contains no specific language about the treatment of contiguous lots under single ownership, one of which is developed. Saco zoning ordinance, for instance, contains the following on non-conforming lots. A single vacant non-conforming lot of record may be built upon, provided that such lot shall be in separate ownership and not contiguous with any other lot in the same ownership, except as provided in subsection B or C. Section B, if 2 or more vacant contiguous lots or parcels are in common ownership of record, or amendment of this chapter, and if any of these lots does not individually meet the dimensional requirements of this chapter or subsequent amendment, the lot shall be combined to the extent necessary to meet the dimensional standards of this chapter, except this shall not apply to contiguous lots with frontage on different sides of the street or to lots legally created or reported as part of an approved subdivision after March 22nd, 1972. Okay, so then part C, if 2 contiguous lots or parcels are in common ownership of record at the time of adoption of this chapter, which is January 3rd, 1985, and either lot does not individually meet the dimensional requirements, and provided that one lot is vacant or contains no principal structure, and the other lot has a principal structure, the lots shall be combined into one lot of record. And then in contrast, the town of Spig Island zoning ordinance includes the following in section 205 on lot regulations.
Yeah, you're breaking up. I can't hear you.
Well, okay, so in contrast, the town of Spig Island zoning ordinance includes the following in section 205 on lot regulations. Section 205.3, in any district, notwithstanding limitations imposed by other provisions of this ordinance, a single lot of record at the effective date of adoption of this ordinance may be built upon, subject to the following conditions. So A is such a lot must be in separate and distinct ownership from adjacent lots on said date. This provision shall apply even though such lots fail to meet the minimum requirements for area or width, or both, that are generally applicable in the district, provided that yard dimensions of the lot shall conform to the requirements for the district in which the lot is located. Variance of setback requirements shall be obtained only through action of the Board of Adjustment and Appeals. So 2053B says if two or more lots or combinations of lots and portions of lots with continuous frontage are in single ownership at the time of passage or amendment of this ordinance, and if all are part of the requirement for lot width and area established by this ordinance, the lands involved shall be considered to be an individual parcel for the purpose of this ordinance, and no portion of said parcel shall be used or sold, which just, oh, I thought it was a mouse. Which does not meet lot width and area requirements established by this ordinance, nor shall any division of the parcel which leaves remaining any lot width or area below the requirements stated in this ordinance. Okay, end of ordinance. Here's the last part of my question. So since section 2053B is a subsection of 2053.3 rather than a separate section, the operative phrase is may be built upon, which means that section 205.3B refers solely to undeveloped contiguous lots. It's one of the conditions to be met if you want to build. Thus, the zoning ordinance contains no specific language covering the treatment of contiguous lots under single ownership, one or more of which are developed. Okay, so Natalie responds, Sam, you are correct in noting that the inclusion of two or more lots in a single deed does not in it of itself cause them to merge into a single lot. They still retain their individual status as lots of record, even if they are described with an external perimeter. The law court discussed this issue in Logan versus City of Biddeford, 2001, Maine 84, 772A, second edition, 1183. Whether non-conforming lots of record are required to be merged for zoning purposes is answered solely by the provisions of the municipality zoning ordinance. As you noted in your emails, different ordinances have very different results. In addition, ordinances frequently treat developed lots differently from undeveloped lots. As you noted, section 205.3 creates rules for lots of record at the effective date of the adoption of the ordinance. The language that is most important in this situation is at the beginning of the section, where it states that a single lot of record may be built upon, subject to the following conditions. In reviewing similar ordinance provisions, the law court determined that use of the phrase may be built upon meant that the merger provision applied only to unimproved lots, meaning that an improved non-conforming lot of record was not required to be merged with an unimproved non-conforming lot of record. The ordinance under consideration in that case appears to be very similar to section 205.3, although the entire ordinance provision is not included in the decision. See LaPointe versus City of Saco, 419A, second 1013, 1016, May 1980. Based upon decisions of the law court and the language of the ordinance, section 205.3 does not require the merger of an improved lot with one or more unimproved lots under the same ownership, even if the lots have continuous frontage. So therefore, what Natalie has just confirmed is that you
I can't hear you.
parcels. You were deeded two parcels, parcel 1 and parcel 2. They have not been merged. They are separate, non-conforming lots of record. You therefore, we're down to, this addition would be on lot 104-046, which is a little over 9,000 square feet.
Mhm.
Lot, the other lot, which as you noted earlier, had been merged in like 1955. They had been two separate lots, but they were formally merged. That does not apply to the two parcels that you purchased in 2010. So we have a bigger problem here. The bigger issue is you're looking at a very small lot.
It's a non-conforming lot. So what?
Well, I thought you said in there when you read that, there's a lot read and there were some gaps in the video, the audio. That there was not a requirement that those lots be merged. That is, the developed and the non-developing, but doesn't that not mean that they can be?
It means you don't have to merge them. You can still sell them separately. Because I noticed, I remember you had said, and I think you repeated this today, that you could not sell that property. But you can, because they're parcel 1 and parcel 2. You can sell each of those.
Okay,
And you don't, in order to build or to even consider building what you're building now, and I'm not saying that you can, you would have to have those properties merged. Otherwise, your option is lot 46 already has a structure on it. It's a
Mhm.
non-conforming structure on a non-conforming lot of record. So you could look at our ordinances and follow those. Or you could take lot 47 and potentially, which is I think what, 16,000 square feet?
well, roughly.
You could potentially, 16,552.8 square feet. You could potentially put a structure on that.
Well,
Sam, can you clarify what you just said? I thought you said that because it's a separate lot, he can't do what he's proposed to do. Why is that?
Well,
Doesn't change it.
why can't I merge it? Why can't, you said,
No, that's just, let's not talk about merging lots. Let's just talk about, it's on a lot.
Yep,
It's
fine.
on a lot that's 64 feet. I guess that's the front, even though the house faces the other way. Wide in the front and 146 feet deep.
right, so if you're
That's
limiting,
parcel 1. Parcel 1, 146 feet by 60 by 154.5 by 64. So why
which is
couldn't you do
approximately
what
9,000 square feet. Well, first of all, there already is a house on this.
right, and he's wanting to put an addition on it. Why couldn't he do that?
but that's less than. I don't know.
Yes, Bruce?
Okay, if we look at only the single lot, that's the developed lot, what we're proposing is well, it's like 10 or 15 feet from the 20-foot setback on the other side of the lot. So
But you-
nobody,
Still have a non-conforming structure of record, and in the previous owners had suggested putting in a septic system on that lot 46. And Dick Sweet noted at the time that they would have to have a variance in
well,
order to
right,
do that.
but I right now I'm proposing to put it on the next lot.
But you
Which you can
can't
do.
because it's not merged. So that
Well-
is,
No, he can do that. He
Okay.
can do that. Why can't he do that?
well,
I can go to that owner and I can get permission to put it on there.
Cheryl, you've heard.
I don't
And I still don't-
understand. Yeah, I don't
I don't
understand why.
understand why I
couldn't-
can't merge the lots.
Perfect.
I don't understand from all the stuff you
could
read.
merge them. Yes.
I-
Merge and then come back and say, look, this is one merged lot. Then you would
Oh.
never be able to further subdivide or sell
I
them.
don't think that has, the
But-
stick system has anything to do with this. Has nothing to do with this. We're simply
it
here
does.
talking about a
It does
variance
have some-
for setback.
Well, I mean, I go out and merge it tomorrow if you want, but
No, I don't care about merging,
It
not
will-
merging. I don't think there's
Okay.
anything wrong with you putting your septic system on the other lot, but that's up to the code enforcement officer. all we're
That's
talking
easy
about
for
here,
essentially, it's easy,
To put an easement, they can do.
but they couldn't just do it, because
No,
otherwise it would be like me putting my septic system on your property. They're two separate lots right
yeah,
now.
well, I have two separate lots and my septic system is on one lot and my well is on the other. So what? It
Okay, I'm gonna
happens.
raise my hand again. I'm gonna go
Telling you
across.
what
this-
our lawyer said, so.
The lawyer was simply talking about whether the lots should be automatically merged, which also happened to us, by the way, because they were undeveloped.
I was asking her, there are specific, some towns have specific sections on how to treat an undeveloped, non-conforming lot of record that's contiguous and under the same, contiguous to and under the same ownership as an undeveloped non-conforming lot of record. We do
Right.
not have that. We assume that it's two undeveloped. Yes,
Now, two lots, one undeveloped.
so Fika? Fika?
The town code enforcement officer would like to say something.
Yeah, can I ask you a question of the applicant?
Right here.
So when you originally went to your site evaluator, I mean, obviously, I think that Natalie's opinion establishes that we have two not lawfully non-conforming lots of record.
Okay.
Did you at all look and see if you could fit and size a system on this lot as if it was a standalone lot and not dependent upon the other lot?
I would say I didn't ask him to do it because my feeling was that I probably couldn't do it and I'd have to come in and get a variance for how far away from my well I am.
Well, those
Okay.
are done, those are typically done, the subsurface wastewater disposal variance is done by the local plumbing inspector in the state of Maine. which
I
is-
understand that,
Yeah.
but I'm just simply saying that when we looked at this, we prefer to stay within, what the design limits or design requirements are, which is 100 feet from wells.
Yeah.
And-
I was
and
just
so-
saying that it might I was just gonna suggest that it could simplify things for the board. That if you could show them that you could spit, this could be a standalone parcel not dependent on the other one. And that you could have a system, even if it is with variances in wells, then really the only thing that the business of the board would be considering is your setback via variance request.
That's what I thought.
As
we were
long as you
here
can
for.
meet on the other side.
Well, I mean, I'll make a comment here, which is if we go right across the road to my existing family cottage, it's a similar deal. It's built on this one of these 60-foot by 120-foot lots. And our septic system is, we own all the property in that trapezoidal shaped piece of property. And it's been in that ownership since, I don't know, the 1950s. And this drawing actually shows that the septic field is on the undeveloped lot. And that was put there, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago, 35 years ago. And I don't know that that's a big type of problem. It's in the same ownership. Isn't the only problem here is that if I put the septic system on the next lot over that we currently own, and I don't merge the lots, and then I go try to sell it, I mean, I'm gonna have to try to convince the owner, I'm gonna have to get a lease from the owner to be able to use to use the lot. I mean, I think the bottom line here is that, I mean, I would just go ahead and go do the merger thing and be done with it. And I don't know how long it takes to do it, but it seems to me I hire a lawyer and put the thing together. And is there an application you have to make to the town to do it?
Some towns do have that,
Well, I want to know about Shabby.
but not. have
No,
that.
not that I know of.
You still
If you
have
wanna
a
merge these
non-conforming
two lots,
lot
go
of
ahead.
record.
I mean, the town came to me 15, 20 years ago and asked me to merge all the lots on the other side of the road, the Hubble properties. And I elected not to do it. They wanted to do it only one, send one tax bill or whatever it was. And I've forgotten the exact reason, but I just kept them the way they were. Nobody made any comment about where the septic system was or not, because it was there at the time. And I don't see how that's going to be an issue as long as we own the property.
Well,
I mean, the only issue is if we try to sell it.
it is an issue because the state of Maine, cases in the state of Maine, they found that undeveloped property is, of course, taxed at a different rate than a developed property. So you can have an unfair tax advantage in keeping the lot separate.
Okay, I'll adjust that. That's one of the reasons they came to me about this. They said that I suspected that might be the case. They assured me that it wasn't. They're going to be taxed the same way as they would before. And they're going to, because they're all contiguous in the same ownership, the town at that time told me that they treated that as if it was one lot, and that's how they taxed it. Now, if you sold it, then it may be something different, but they're considering it all one piece. And I'm assuming that they're doing the same thing with what's here now. But
I'm sorry, we're talking about your family property or this
I'm talking about
46 and
the Hubble
47?
Family Trust
Just
property
kind of-
across the street. The town came to me long before I was involved with this property and wanted me to merge the lots for tax purposes. And I said I didn't really want to do that. I thought it might raise my tax bill. And they said, no, it won't. We treat all the property that's contiguous, that's in one lot, that's in substandard lots, which is what these all are. They would treat them all as one piece, and they're going to tax them that way. And I'm assuming they do the same thing with this lot. And I don't know how long it takes to do it. So what you're telling me, I gather, is that there's no application, or, you know, the Board of Selectmen don't have to vote on whether I'm going to merge my lots or not. I can just raise my hand and get my lawyer to merge them and tell the town we want to merge them. Maybe I don't have to go to a lawyer to do it. Does Vika have any idea about whether we can just say, I can raise my hand and say, send a letter and say, I want to merge the lots? Just put them all together?
I'm not a lawyer.
I
so-
can't answer that question for you. I think you're gonna need discussion with probably a tax assessor and your attorney, but that's not a question that I can answer for you.
No,
Well, can the town's attorney answer it?
Assessor can,
I think that in this particular case, the town attorney is going to support and represent the Board of Adjustment Appeals. And as far as merging the lots, that's something that you as a property owner need to figure out separately. I don't think that.
No, I want to stop for that. I just want to know whether the town has any particular procedures or requirements for how that can be done, and whether or not the town could actually facilitate that. I'm not asking them to do it. I just want to know what the rules are before I go hire an attorney to do it, when I find out that all I had to do, the lot I had with my own property, the family property, the town came to me and asked me if they could do it.
Richard,
So I'm
I
wondering,
understand that. we can't answer because.
I know you can't.
Sure, we can't answer that question. All we can do is tell you that these lots are two separate parcels and we cannot consider them one right now.
Okay,
According to the advice of the.
I got that.
And I will reiterate that I don't see what that has to do with this.
Right.
Well, it does, let's,
Somebody
Okay.
needs to explain
are there
that to me.
any further questions,
Yes, I want to know what that has to do with this.
Vika?
The code enforcement officer had her hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to answer his question from, in as far as I know, because I've read all the regulations, there's no special process the town of Shabig has for merging lots into one ownership. Basically, you would get a title attorney to do that for you, and then you have to have a new deed drawn up and filed with the registry of deeds and given to the tax assessor. And that's basically how that process works. I just wanted to answer that for the applicant,
Thank
if
you,
that's what he's looking to do.
Well, I have a
Pretty
question.
simple process.
thank you.
I realize that, and I can go do that, and I probably will. But the question I have about this is, how was it that 15 years ago, the town just sent me a letter and suggested I do it? And they didn't even ask me anything about
Don't,
Well,
getting a
was
title
it-
attorney.
was it for-
and writing a
no.
deed.
Can I just say something because consideration of merging lots and contiguous lots as one lot are very different depending on what law you're falling under. You know, for zoning purposes, they're different a lot of times than for assessment purposes. And there's a lot of people that get very confused because it's a confusing topic. So it all depends on how they are viewing it. They could have merged your lots as one for tax purposes and
Okay.
their assessments, but that doesn't mean that automatically that, waives all of the deeds out of the registry of deeds that's filed. So I think it all depends on how which law you look at it under.
Okay, I got it. I'll see what I can do about this. I go back to Cheryl's comment, which is how does this affect how this particular proposal is that there are no other setbacks. The other setbacks that are applied to that lot would not be impacted by what we're proposing. If we move it, I would say this much, and that is that if we move it forward another 10 or 15 feet, it might have an impact.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, that's what Thad was about to say, was that if you consider building only on lot 46, which is all we can consider here, because this is what you have given us, then Tad is
Well,
suggesting
yeah.
to meet the set, you might not meet the set.
Might not meet
It
the
does.
setback requirement if you move it forward, but it would meet the setback requirements if you merge the two contiguous lots.
well,
But
I guess
what
the
he's
other issue is-
proposed and what he's proposed and wants a variance for does meet the setbacks.
Okay, do we
Um,
have any other questions here? Because
It's
I would-
18 feet.
Yes.
Okay, I added it all up. It meets the setbacks.
Okay,
Okay, I have one other comment or question here, and that is that when I put together this application, I don't know where I put the thing I read from. I specifically identified when I put the application in, it was asked, what lots are they? Like what are you applying for? And I put down both lots.
Oh.
Okay, I can't find the thing. I don't know where I put it now. Boy, I missed it over here. Where is I read from it?
You're
Right.
talking about your
Here.
original application?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have it. We have it.
Identified right on there, I believe. I don't have it right in front of me now for some reason. I just read from it, but
Richard.
oh, here it is over here. How could I have read from it without? Well, in any case, I'm pretty sure it shows on the front page, on the application front page,
Yeah,
that I was applying for both lots.
Correct.
And so I still don't understand. I mean, to some extent, unless I go sell the lot, it doesn't have any, impact on this. And as long as the proposal we put together here would comply with the lots. The only issue is where you put a septic tank or where you put the leach field. And I still haven't heard anybody comment from a code enforcement area or a plumbing code area whether I can have my plumbing, my leach field on an adjacent lot that I own, or whether there's some other problem with that.
Well, that would become, I think, when you apply for your building permit following whatever decision is made today.
I've already applied for the building permit.
Granted, you have applied for it, but it depends on getting a variance, whether it's accepted or not.
okay.
Okay, so
We're set then. No further questions? Then we're going to close this portion of the hearing to public comment. Let me make sure. Yeah, we're closing it at
5:07.
5:07 to public comments. And now the board will go into deliberations. So thank you, and we appreciate your patience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So first off, in seeking a variance for practical difficulty, an applicant must satisfy the requirements of both state law, 30A MRS Section 4353, and Town of Spey Island zoning ordinance. So according to section 38 MRS, section 4353.4 on variance, except as provided in subsections 4A, 4B, and 4C, and section 4353-A, the board may grant a variance only when strict application of the ordinance to the petitioner and the petitioner's property would cause undue hardship. The term undue hardship, as used in this subsection, means the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless a variance is granted. In other words, undue hardship refers to the characteristics of the property and not of the owner, and means that the owners would be unable to use the land for any permitted purpose without a variance. Now, it has a permitted use of a house, which lot 46 already has on it. So I would argue, so the first part, the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless a variance is granted. Want to go through each of these?
Oh, we,
Okay, or should I? I'll just go through. So we'll say Jennifer Hubble is the owner of lots I-04, 046 and I-04, 047. Both lots are non-conforming lots of record. Both lots are in the Island Residential District. Neither lot is in the shoreland zone. The applicant proposes adding a modest two-story, two-bedroom year-round dwelling to the existing unusable two-story cottage and connecting the two structures so that the code compliant kitchen, bathrooms, and stairway can serve the existing structure, creating a 4-bedroom summer seasonal residence. Lot I-04, 046 and lot I-04, 047 are taxed as two separate non-conforming lots of record. 46 contains 9147.6 square feet and 47 contains 16,552.8 square feet. The deed conveying ownership to Jennifer Hubble lists lot I-04, 046 as parcel 1 and I-04, 047 as parcel 2. Common ownership of two contiguous lots of record, one of which is improved, does not automatically merge the lots into a single non-conforming lot of record. Okay. So lots 46 and 47 have not been formally merged and must be considered separate non-conforming lots of record. Applicant argues that they could not sell each of the lots separately, but there is no TOCI ordinance forbidding the sale of a non-conforming lot of record. There is an ordinance prohibiting them from being further subdivided. Therefore, a lot 47 could be sold and built upon by a new owner. Alternatively, lots 46 and 47 could be merged, but such a merger would still result in a non-conforming lot. So lot 47 as an undeveloped non-conforming lot of record could be built on, provided that the proposed structure meets the lot regulations listed in zoning ordinance section 205, the setback requirements enumerated in zoning ordinance section 204.1E, and septic system requirements listed in zoning ordinance section 424.1. which essentially is that all subsurface sewage disposal systems shall be constructed in conformance with the state of Maine subsurface waste disposal rules. And zoning ordinance 424.4. Lot 46 already has a non-conforming dwelling of record on it, and it's considered a developed non-conforming lot of record. The dwelling on lot 46 represents a use permitted in the zoning district in which the property is located. The dwelling on lot 46 is non-conforming with respect to side setback. So the zoning ordinance that pertains is 205.4 in the IR Island Residential and Island Business Districts, notwithstanding limitations imposed by other provisions of this ordinance, a lot containing at least 20,000 square feet, as shown on a plan of a subdivision duly approved and recorded in the Cumberland County Record of Deeds on July 31st, 1975, whether said lot was a separate and distinct ownership from adjacent lots on said date may be built upon, subject to the conditions in section 204.1 C, D, and E, or section 204.3 C, D, and E. So lot 46 contains 9147.6 square feet. So
It's already built on.
I didn't see, understand that.
I didn't,
I said it, oops. I said that the lot is a non-conforming lot and it already has a building on it.
yes,
And he is proposing to make an addition to that building. He's not building on an empty lot.
yeah. So
It's less than 20,000 square feet.
right. Okay. But it does, okay. Okay, so significant economic injury, which we've already explained, is not connected to how much it may cost you to comply with the zoning ordinance. It is whether you can get no use at all out of the property, which it's whether no return can be realized on the property if a variance is not granted. So that's a fairly high bar.
You're looking at state law, right? 4353.
Yep. And
Under 4, right? And it says, except as provided in subsections 4A, 4B, and 4C, right? And we're talking here about 4C, a variance from dimensional standards.
right,
And we're not talking about what the questions they ask there are not the questions we need to answer. The questions we need to answer are under 4C. And those are the ones you were addressing at the last hearing.
these are the ones that we're significant.
Well, it's not talking about the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return. I don't see that.
That's the definition of significant economic injury.
No, I'm saying that question is not in 4C.
But it is in our code. Here's the Board of Appeals. The applicant is asked to document, please document how significant economic injury would occur. So this is why we need a definition of significant economic injury. Now, Richard refers only to the added cost he would incur to comply with the current zoning ordinance. That is not the definition of significant economic injury, which is, can the land yield nothing at all, no return at all?
Where are you reading from in our zoning ordinance?
I'm reading the application for practical difficulty, right here. Right here. Variance application form, practical difficulty. Pursuant to 30-MRSA, Section 4353, 4C, the Board of Adjustment and Appeals may grant a variance only when strict application of the ordinance to the applicant and the applicant's property would cause a practical difficulty, and when the following conditions exist. Practical difficulty shall mean that the strict application of the ordinance to the property precludes the ability of the petitioner to pursue a use permitted in the zoning district in which the property is located and results in a significant economic injury to the petitioner. Please document how significant economic injury would occur. Now, I agree, it would be helpful if on our board site, we had a definition of significant economic injury, because most applicants read this and think, oh, it's going to cost me more to comply. It's going to cost me a lot more to move the building. But that's not what the question is. The question is, would you not be able to realize any use, any use at all? And of course, you couldn't, because there's already a building on it, so you can realize it. You cannot, the concept is not to maximize an owner's return on use. It's just, the bar is any use at all, not maximize. So we have, he states that the applicant states that the other alternative considered is to build a completely separate 4-bedroom structure with similar features that would likely cost about $100,000 more and leave the existing structure as an uninhabitable building suitable only for some day use or storage. And then applicant states that meeting the current setback requirement for the proposed new building alone would result in significant economic injury, which he defines as an additional $35,000 cost to the project. Okay, so I think first, Cheryl, we have to look at whether he could realize no value at all if he's not granted this variance.
That would be under one of the 6 criteria.
Yeah, well, he had to define significant injury, economic injuries. So according to he just lists that it would cost him more. Vika?
You have the code enforcement officer and Rich who've had their hands up for an extended
Well-
period of time.
Actually, we're now in discussions with the board. So it's closed to public discussion. So if we want to ask them a question, we can, but we are just discussing among ourselves.
Oh.
Okay,
So is your staff person to the board? Am I allowed to
Do not-
say anything as far as? I know it's closed to the public. But is it closed to your staff person as well?
Never been asked that question.
Yeah, typically it's not.
No.
Then go for it.
So I don't know if it sounds to me like the criteria, and I'm not trying to say that anybody's right or wrong. I just looked in the ordinance really quick and I found it sounds like he applied for a practical difficulty variance, and I think this is Cheryl's point, is that the definition in the zoning ordinance, if you look at the practical difficulty definition, has the 5 or 6 standards that at least any other board that I've staffed has gone through, and it's different, and it sounds like this is the hardship criteria, which is not what he applied for. He applied for the practical
Right.
difficulty, and I
But
think those are
the applicants are asked to answer these questions.
okay.
So it's on our form. I mean, I'm not making this stuff up. The
However, the ordinance does not require that he meet it.
He-
Doesn't.
doesn't require that he meet what?
Say that again. Cheryl.
significant economic difficulty or hardship or whatever it's called. It doesn't, neither does the state law. The questions that it does require to be answered are in four
Okay, well,
C.
it's on our forms. So
I know,
Been
I understand that.
please stop. Okay, I'm just going with our form, which it asks the applicant to list that. So I assume that that would be important for some reason. Okay, so the first question in practical difficulty, you need to find and make a positive finding on each of these criteria. So zoning ordinance section 110 defines practical difficulty as follows. Practical difficulty shall mean that the strict application of the ordinance to the property precludes the ability of the petitioner to pursue a use permitted in the zoning district in which the property is located and results in significant economic injury to the petitioner. An applicant for practical difficulty variance must show compliance with the following standard. So the first part is the need for a variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property and not to the general condition of the neighborhood. Now, I believe this Caps Road area contains numerous other non-conforming lots of record. So his lots are not unique to the neighborhood. His lot 46 contains a non-conforming dwelling of record that is non-conforming owing to a failure to meet the side setback requirement. Again, probably not unique to that neighborhood. Therefore, the current dwelling represents a use permitted in the zoning district in which the property is located. So, and then we go back to the fact that the existing building can be repaired.
Wait a minute, I thought we were answering the question about the need for a variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property and not to the general condition of the neighborhood.
Right, but I am saying that a lot of the other properties on Caps Road are these small, non-conforming lots of record. This is not the only one. So it's not a zebra. There are other ones on this road.
Yes, there are. Yes.
So it's not unique. So his property is not unique in that respect.
The need for the variance is due to the unique characteristics of the property. I don't even know what this means, and not to the general condition of the neighborhood. I would like to ask our CEO to weigh in on what that means. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. I mean, there's a lot of different, I mean, look at the house at the end of the road. I mean, that's totally different. And then there's ones over here that are right on the road. And I mean, every one is different.
Yeah, but we're not actually talking about what was built there. We're talking about the topography. So if all his other neighbors had perfectly flat land and his suddenly had a really high witch's hat peak, that would be unique. But as it is, or if his was the only little bitty non-conforming lot in this other neighborhood, which had 5 or 6 acres, all of them had 5 or 6 or 10 acres, that would be unique.
Well, what I find is unique circumstance of this property is that there is an existing dwelling currently on it that has been there for 100 years. And it happens to not meet our current setbacks. And he wants to put an addition on it. So it is unique.
No, but that would also be true of the properties across the street where Lord Theobald.
I'm sure we could find any number of properties all over the island that are similar in that respect. but it's because of where that particular existing building is that he needs a variance.
That's
See, I don't
not
really
part of-
understand, I don't really understand the purpose of this question in general, which is why I wanted the CEO to weigh in, but you know, it's like, who cares?
Well,
it's,
we have to
you know,
We have to
as
care-
far as
you
I'm
look at the
concerned,
board,
every
Just based on
situation is
the-
unique.
Cheryl,
Hmm?
The Board of Appeals workshop if you look at the
I did look at that and
Maine
it didn't help.
Municipal Association website, it has lots of workshops for variances and what undue hardship is, what unique circumstances are. So
I looked it up in the manual. I didn't find it helpful.
it doesn't matter that you don't think it's important. It just matters that.
No,
that's-
I said I didn't think it was how they explained it was helpful.
Well, it's probably not helpful because.
I mean, give me an example where, you
I
know,
just-
the need for
Okay,
a variance
I
is,
Cheryl, I
Do-
just did.
yes.
So the unique circumstances are if
we're getting ready.
every other piece of property is flat in that neighborhood, but theirs have a huge hill. That means they're the only ones in that neighborhood that have that, and that's unique. But non-conforming lots, non-conforming dwellings, that's pretty characteristic of that road, that neighborhood, and it just.
Yeah,
is
that's a judgment call.
What?
That's a judgment call.
Clear, Cheryl.
Hmm?
Repeat that, please, Cheryl. It didn't come through.
I
clear.
said, that's really a judgment call. And I just asked, I don't know, 3 times for the CEO to weigh in on it.
Right, well, you can look at case law, Maine case law, you can look at.
I asked for the CEO to weigh in on it. That's what I asked for. That's all I'm saying.
Okay,
So
Tammy?
I'm sorry, what was the question? And I did have my hand up because I actually have a meeting that I have to be at 8 o'clock.
Okay.
Actually get
I
ready.
was asking you to please explain to me the first question, the need for a variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property and not the general condition of the neighborhood.
Well, I think that's up to the applicant to explain what is unique about his property. It's like Sam said, there could be, I've seen variances granted for, where extensive excavation would need to happen. It could be multiple things. There could be like heavy vegetation that needed to be removed that could create an open space that would create some other sort of environmental factor that you should consider. So it's really more up to the applicant to explain what their unique circumstances is opposed to, because I don't know the general conditions of his neighborhood, but those would be the sort of things that would normally be cited. Did that answer that?
Yep. Mhm.
okay.
So, but basically the applicant said, as noted in the project description under the significant economic injury, the issues involved in the requested variance are unique to the property because the existing structure is only 7 feet from the sideline. The conditions in the neighborhood have no bearing on the issue.
Okay, but that's his opinion, Cheryl, and we may well have another opinion based on.
Right.
Case law. So given that that's what he said, yeah, he's referring not to the property itself, but to the structure on the property, which is a non-conforming because of the side setback. He's not saying anything about the property itself, like whether there's a volcano on it. So I guess we should move on to B, which is the
Well,
granting.
I think don't we have to answer A?
Well, we do. He has to meet all criteria. All
Right.
these
Have we
criteria
answered
have-
A? I mean, don't we have to answer it as a group? Or are we just going through it now?
We were just gonna go through it. We can,
Okay.
and then vote on each one of these, because you
Okay,
vote on each issue, each question.
After we go through the 6, we vote on them individually.
Okay, so
Yeah,
B.
so I just wanted to, I do have to go, Sam.
Okay, thank you.
Do you, Vika has my phone number if you really need to reach me. If you have a
Alright.
question, I mean, I can keep, I just need, we're in, like a budget marathon tonight. So unless any of the other board members has any other questions before I go.
I don't think so. Do you?
Mhm.
Okay, no. if
Okay.
you really
Sorry, I
didn't-
can't stay a
Oh,
little
no,
bit later.
that's fine.
It's all right, it's going on a long time.
Okay, see you guys.
Bye, thank you.
Hi, thank you.
So B, the granting of a variance will not produce an undesirable character of the neighborhood and will not unreasonably detrimentally affect the use or market value of abutting properties. And Richard said that, and we received, I think, 3 letters in support of the proposed structure, as Richard alluded to. And then at the first part of the meeting, at least one other abutter who was present at the meeting spoke in support of the proposed structure. And applicant stated that they had spoken with the abutter whose land is contiguous to the side setback in question, and the abutter declined to speak or write in support of the proposed addition. So that's all, I mean,
That's the
Cheryl,
facts we have.
that's what we have. I believe that's a fair,
And Richard responded to some questions at the previous hearing that answered questions that I had about the problem of view being impeded by the other house behind it. And I would agree with his summary of that.
right, and the abutters all noted that this property, this little house on it had been an eyesore or deteriorating for years, and they were pleased that someone wanted to, I'm paraphrasing, someone wanted to make it look nice again. So that's all for that. So C, the practical difficulty is not the result of action taken by the petitioner or a prior owner. And the current home on lot 46 is approximately 100 years old and was not built by the petitioner or the previous owners. The applicant did purchase lots 46 and 47 in 2010 when the current zoning ordinance was in effect. And the applicant must therefore be presumed to have knowledge of the building restrictions imposed by our zoning ordinance on non-conforming lots and buildings of record. But do you have?
No, his comments were.
Yeah, I think he just commented
Yeah.
that it was an old house and he hadn't built it, nor had the people he bought it from. So, and it's a non-conforming lot of record. So D, no other feasible alternative to a variance is available to the petitioner. And the applicant lists 2 alternatives to the proposed structure, with the only restriction related to these alternatives being the additional costs associated with meeting side setback rules. Applicant states that the meeting the current setback requirement for the proposed new building alone would result in significant economic injury, which is defined as an additional $35,000 cost to the project. An applicant states that the other alternative considered is to build a completely separate 4-bedroom structure with similar features as the existing structure that would likely cost about $100,000 more and leave the existing structure as an uninhabitable building suitable only for some day use or storage. So here we have zoning ordinance section 501.1A, which specifically allows a non-conforming building or structure to be repaired, altered, improved, or reconstructed. It also allows a non-conforming building or structure to be added to or expanded after obtaining a permit from the same permitting authority as that for a new structure if such addition or expansion does not increase the non-conformity of the structure or expand the area of a non-conforming use. Okay, E, the granting of a variance will not unreasonably adversely affect the natural environment. And in answer to Tad's question on the first part of the session, the applicant said there was a new dug well on the property. He said that any associated septic system plan would meet local and state regulations.
And that would be dealt with during the permitting process.
Right, and the applicant said, the reason that they weren't going to build a structure on lot 47 was owing to continuing drainage issues. But it seems to have been a consideration at one point. So F, the property is not located in whole or in part within the shoreland areas as described in 38 MRS section 435. And neither lot is in the shoreland zone. Right?
Correct.
Okay. So I think we have to vote separately on each of these. For a variance to be granted on the basis of practical difficulty, applicants must meet all requirements of 30A MRSA section 4353 and all 6 criteria listed in the definition of practical difficulty, as well as document how significant economic injury would occur as a result of the failure to grant a variance on the basis of practical difficulty. So do you want to go to voting? You think, Cheryl, do you want to vote on each of the sections? Do you want to? I have no saliva left in my mouth.
Yep.
So. So part A. So we're going to vote on part A. The need for a variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property and not to the general condition of the neighborhood. Is it all in favor or all agree?
No, I think we need to just make a motion.
Yeah, so who, do you want to make a motion, Cheryl?
Sure, communications breaking.
Cheryl, you're muted.
Oh, we lost.
Now I'm just totally gone. Okay, so I move that the need for a variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property and not to the general conditions of the neighborhood.
Okay, all in favor? Raise your hand. All opposed? Okay. So the granting of a variance will not produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood and will not unreasonably detrimentally affect the use or market value of abutting properties.
I make a motion that the granting of a variance will not produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood and will not unreasonably detrimentally affect the use of market or market value of the abutting properties.
All in favor?
I'll second that.
Okay, good point. We needed a
That's
second.
right.
Thanks, Cheryl.
On this, we haven't gotten this far. C, the practical difficulty is not the result of action taken by the petitioner or a prior owner.
I make a motion that the practical difficulty is not the result of action taken by the petitioner or a prior owner.
I would second that.
Okay. All agreed?
In favor? Okay.
All in favor?
Sam, it's difficult to see your hand, so if for anyone watching, there we go. It's not, your hand's not appearing in the camera. Thank you.
Okay.
D. I make a motion that no other feasible alternative to the variance is available to the petitioner.
Second,
Second,
Second.
all in favor? All opposed? So we have
E.
E.
E is, the property is not located in whole or in part.
That's F.
No,
What's
E
that?
is the granting of a variance will not unreasonably adversely affect the natural environment. And
I second it.
All in favor? Okay, the last one is the property is not located in whole or in part within the shoreland areas as described in Title 38, Section 435.
So it's not.
So moved.
Motion that the property is not located in a whole or part within the shoreland areas as described in Title 38, Section 435. All agreed?
I second it.
Oh, second, yeah.
No.
All
In
agreed?
favor?
Okay. So. Now. The next part is the applicant did or did not meet all 6 criteria.
Did not.
Did not. Okay, based on this, we cannot issue a variance.
We still. Now you have that
Do
thing.
you want to
Did you want to,
vote on this?
do we? The applicant did or did not document how significant. economic-
Well, it's one of the questions
Okay,
here.
so that
So,
was already taken care
no, I
What?
mean,
of. Okay,
What,
so we,
what are we talking about here?
because it's one of the questions on the application, we have to make a motion regarding whether the applicant did document did or did not document how significant economic injury would occur as a result of the failure to grant a variance on the basis of.
Well, I guess that's your call because that's not in the ordinance.
It's,
We have to vote on that.
if it's not in the ordinance.
So we can if you want to.
it's just that why is it in the application?
I don't know.
Okay, well,
Because it falls under the feasible alternatives. I mean, that
exactly.
too.
I agree completely that it seems kind of redundant, except some towns differentiate, I guess, between
Maybe it used to be in the ordinance.
maybe, but
It's not in the state ordinance either. Under setback. Variance to dimensional standards.
well, okay.
And I would just like to explain why I truly believe that there is no feasible alternative to what has been proposed that requires a variance. And it's surely, I mean, that's up until 3 hours ago, I would have said there were alternatives, but having looked very closely at the blueprints and really, I mean, I just kept saying to myself, I don't understand until I saw this. I don't understand what he's trying to do. I don't understand why he's doing it this way. Why doesn't he just leave that little cottage there and build another house and have a guest house? People love to stay in a guest house. Well, I can see exactly what he's trying to do. He's trying to build at a reasonable cost a home for his family to use. And so I don't think there is a feasible alternative. I don't think moving it forward and building a tower, regardless of how much it costs, is feasible. I wouldn't think it was feasible. I wouldn't even do it. If I got turned down for a variance, I wouldn't do it. I think what he has proposed really is the only alternative that makes use of the existing structure. I think that Bruce Butler spoke to it very succinctly about the sweet spot of where those two buildings are joined and how it's going to be done. I think it's all been very well thought out, and I am truly in support of it. And I'm sorry you guys don't agree.
We just have to follow.
You just have to what? Well,
We
so
have
do
to
I.
follow what's written. Why? Because.
So no,
we
I
do.
said so do I. And I
Oh.
truly
So,
believe
and
I'm
but- so
following
that's
the
your
ordinance.
personal opinion. But according to the ordinance, he did list alternatives.
Yeah,
and
but they're
the
not
only-
feasible.
Carol, excuse
But-
me. No, the only prohibition was cost. And that's
Well, it's
not.
not just cost. It's not just cost. It was explained. You
Well,
know,
but
it's
they
not
said
just
it was
cost.
cost.
It's a matter of how it was designed and engineered. That's why it was put where it was put. It wasn't put 11 feet from this
Okay,
from
well,
the property line just to make sure that it was a little more than
We-
7,
We
you know?
can
It was
agree
put
to
where it was
disagree on
put
that.
because that was the
I'm not
right
going to
place
be
to
like-
put it.
Sarah, I can just say, I'm not going to give you my personal opinion because it's not relevant here. It's just my institutional.
Well, that's not my personal opinion. That's what Bruce said. And I'm just saying, I just wanted to explain why I
Personally,
voted the way I did. That's all. That's all I
Right,
wanted
and
to do.
saying if I were a neighbor and I was a private person at this point, I might say something different, but I am constrained. So
So you,
That's
I
fine.
just, all I wanted to do was explain why I voted the way I did and why I don't think that there's a feasible alternative.
okay, and we have discussed alternatives, and I think Richard's gonna look into merging the properties, and that would give him potentially more leeway to.
Oh,
put
he still
buildings
can't
in
do it.
a spot or something, but anyway, what we have to do is now make a motion about whether he did or did not meet all 6 criteria. Do you want to go?
Let's see, and that is. And that's this one right here, isn't it?
So on 4 of the 6 criteria, we agreed that he met them. On 2, no.
On one, not 2, we agreed.
Once, when you
mean,
only have 3.
5,
so
we, was it?
Once you have a disagreement,
Yeah.
it automatically, I don't know. So no, he did not. So I move that I make a motion that the applicant did not meet all 6 criteria listed in the definition of practical difficulty, and that therefore we cannot grant a variance.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? Okay, 2 to 1. Okay. So
Meeting adjourned.
meeting is adjourned then at
One of those 8.
20 of 8. Thank you.
Are you guys all set that I can end the meeting?
So.
Yep. Thanks
Okay.
very much.
Thank you, Sarah.
Have a great night.